our present actions should be not driven by habits, they should be driven by our goals. And in order to do that, we have to imagine the future first. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of Cardcast, a podcast where we pick up one of the CEO game cards like this and just talk about it. So let's do that. Let's pick up a card and see what the topic is going to be today.
Imagining the future. Now, this is a club card. So, Milan, what are club cards again? Let's remind the viewers.
Oh, wonderful. Clubs are all about mindset and inner games, meaning how do we do the work that is not necessarily seen, but that affects the outcome once we start executing on it. And imagining a future is very, very important tool in any CEO's toolbox because that's our job, right? As a visionary, we have to create a vision, imagining the future, and then plot the path to it to get the organization there. And it comes with a whole bunch of things. How do we communicate that image? How do we do that? But it's quite disturbing to see how often this is actually not being practiced.
Yeah.
Like, how many companies do come to you and when you say, okay, so where are we going? Well, we are doing this now, so let's at 12%, would that be okay? Is that healthy growth rate? And you're like, oh my goodness, what are we doing here? Let's start from scratch. What do you want?
Yeah.
Right? That's a key question. Where do you want to be? What would feel good? How do you know that you succeeded in that future point? Try to get them, do that time travel that we talked about in Luxury to Waste Time episode. And to move to that point and then being able to look backwards, see what's true. Cameron Harold in Vivid Vision is calling it reverse engineering of the Vivid Vision, right? Like what needs to happen in order to get us there.
Yeah, I see a lot of. Sorry, you go. Keep going.
No, I was just about to wrap up and hand over because I was like the same thing, right? Like it feels or sounds so obvious. Of course, like in order to get somewhere, we have to imagine where we are. We are a future focused species, right? We are constantly planning. We don't go instinctively. We say, okay, I want to go and make breakfast because otherwise I will get hungry in an hour, right? The future thinking is innate and ingrained in us. We just need to expand it for over time for a longer period of time and then bigger system like the organization that we are working in. But the principle remains the same. We are imagining the future of having had the breakfast and not being hungry anymore. And now we need to do the steps of going to crack some eggs to get to that point, right? We naturally think that way. We just need to do the same thing with a company or any organization we're leading.
Yeah. So I find that probably about 30% of the CEOs I talk to could reasonably well describe where they want to be by the end of their current quarter. And about 10% can probably describe where they want to be at the end of the year. But less than 5%, probably 2, maybe even less than that, can actually describe they want to be in 3 years' time. And if they can describe it at all, they're just plucking a number out the air. 15 million, 20 million, 50 million. But they can't describe anything else about that future-looking target. Now, they can't say, well, okay, this is where we think we want to be playing. This is where we're going to expand our product line. This is what we're going to do to be able to reinforce our position in the market. They just don't have that perspective. They haven't done the thinking. So they haven't imagined through to the future. And use the, why don't we grow 10, 12% a year? And that's probably as good as it gets for most CEOs. Now, what did we do last year? Well, we did 8 last year. What do you do the year before? 10%. Okay. Well, why don't we just extrapolate 9% per year over the next few years, and that's where we'll be. That shows complete lack of imagination. As you said, where do we want to be? And then you've got to backtrack and say, okay, what do we need to do to be able to get there? It's flipping it over on its head. Now, Rather than saying, this is what we did in the past, so this is what we think we'll do in the future, say, where do we want to be? And then what have we got to do to make that come true?
I absolutely love, and what really cemented this thinking for me was the talk you and I both listened to of Dr. Benjamin Hardy.
Mm.
He was talking about um, uh, the way many people live their life is that the past informs the present and the present determines the future, right? Well, when the reality actually is that the future should inform the present, meaning the future we want will determine the choices we are making today. And guess what? Our present actually determines our past, counterintuitive as it sounds, because really our past are just stories. And we're
Yes.
making those stories, right? I remember having a massive, massive crisis. Like I had a really tough year, identity crisis, therapy, anxiety attacks, just, we are here among friends with our listeners, so we can go there, right? It was really, really tough. But from the perspective of 5 years later, I want that because that formed who I am, and I can see the positive impacts of this. And yes, the situation that led to it was not pleasant, and who knows what, but it's an experience I needed, and I am in so much better place for it. So I went from complaint to gratitude on for that particular one, right? Even the darkness is a gift, and it that's a quote from somebody. I had it on the wall somewhere. I really like it. Somebody gave me a pot of darkness, I think, and it took me a while to realize that even that was a gift. I'm paraphrasing, and I don't know the author. I'm sorry, but that is what it is. Like our past is what we make of it as a story, what we take from it for today, and our present actions should be not driven in by habits, by instincts. They should be driven by our goals. And in order to do that, we have to imagine the future first. Again, I love food analogies because I'm a little bit of a foodie. A little bit is an understatement. I have a mild case of very severe obsession with food, especially with ramen. That is what's going on, right? That's what's going on. You're imagining the state of, having the plate in front of you, or having just eaten it, or having had that experience of sharing the meal with friends. And then you work backwards all the way to Miss Applause, right? To get going and get to that point. Love that term as well. By the way, it's French. If you didn't know what it means, it's French for having your shit together before you start doing anything else.
Yeah, mise en
But
place,
that
everything in its
applies.
place.
But it applies to pretty much everything we do.
Yeah. So this is about, being able to not just think it, it's also about being able to articulate it. Because if you've got a really clear picture in your mind, but you can't share it with anyone, it's on you. Yeah. You've got to bring it to life. If you can articulate where you want to get to in the future in a way that is simple and clear and that people can swing behind, then you've got 1000% more chance of actually bringing it to life. If it stays in your head, no matter how clear it is, it's just the power of one person, not the power of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000.
Look, I have a few books references that are running through my head right now, and I think that they're all equally important. So I'll just list them. Vivid Vision by Cameron Harold. That's exactly about how to materialize this. Be
Yep.
Your Future Self Now, Dr. Benjamin Hardy's. Very, very similar concept, right? The slightly different execution. Oh, fabulous. Interesting. What I also like, which helps a lot. Okay, if you pull the third one, I'll be really impressed. Chip and then Heath, Decisive.
I've got it. I'm listening to it on Audible right now.
Okay. You get a pass for that one. Look, uh, because they have this beautiful, beautiful concept. Like, okay, 3 for 3. I'm impressed. Um, they have this beautiful concept. Everybody knows what postmortem is. Something went wrong, so what are we going to learn from it? So they came with a concept of a pre-parade, right? Everything's going to go great. This is how it's going to look like. Now, what can we learn from that, right? Like putting ourselves into that future place. Again, Dr. Benjamin Hardy would absolutely agree with that. Cameron would say that's the reverse engineering of the past to the desired future, right? Norman Wolf would say, from the Living Organization, who says there's the roadmap to your strategy compass, right? Like we are using different terminologies, but ultimately we're talking about the same thing. This is imagining how good looks like. How do we know we got there? And then what needs to be true in order to get us, and which of those truths we have under our control, and therefore what are the actions we need to take to make them into being. There's the whole process of planning, of getting the organization somewhere. But you have to start with that bullseye you're aiming for, because, as Greg Crabtree famously said, he who aims at nothing hits it every time with amazing accuracy. And that was a lot of book references and a lot of name dropping. I hope it will be okay.
We recently did an episode on the luxury of wasting time, and in that we talked about reading books is not a waste; it's actually essential. So if you're not reading, you're not learning, and if you're not learning, then you're not getting ahead. You're not keeping ahead of your competitors.
And look, and because learning is hard, because the book is a commitment, and we have the luxury because of our job, and because it is actually our job to consume a lot of information so we can sift it and then help our clients with finding what is relevant to them and hitting them with just one book. That's partially why these cards were created.
Yeah.
Because you can go through them and say, oh, this looks relevant, and then you can do the 3 to 5 minute read, and then if you find it relevant, then you can follow down the rabbit hole. But because sometimes, like, where do you start your daily learning habit? That's actually a term that one of my mentees brought, that, go to cards and say, hey, I have new learning habit. I'm going to pick one card every morning at random, and I'm just going to read it over my coffee in the morning and see where it takes me. It's wonderful, obviously hugely satisfying to me. I won't deny that, but that is the point. Learning needs to happen. You have to make time for it. It will help you imagine the future, and then find a way and find the tools and get help in getting there.
It'll help you imagine the future, but it'll also help you create the future. Yeah, because that learning is essential to be able to do things different or do things differently in a way that's going to get you ahead of your competitors. And ultimately, now we want to win. We want to win in business. We want to win in life, and we need to have a goal to aim for.
Mm-hmm. And start with the want, right? Don't compromise by thinking what you can or can't do. When we do our tree hack process, the tree hack is a want. This is where we want to be. This is what would feel good once we get there. Notice the fact that I didn't use the word if. I use the word once we do.
When.
And then, of course, you iterate through that. And of course, you're validating it. And of course, you're challenging the goals. But you have to start with that imagining on, hey, this would be great if we get there. I would be really happy. Now let's make it a reality.
Yeah. And a leadership team member once said to me, well, what do we do when we get there? I said, well, we reset it. But actually, we don't. We reset it every year. So we've always got that 3-year want out there in front of us. So we've always got that thing that we're looking to get to, that thing that we know that when we get there, yeah, that'll be success. We're winning.
Starting with the imagining, though. You have to make time to imagine. You have to solidify that vision. You have to find a way to communicate it to the rest of the team, and sometimes outside to customers, vendors, partners, whoever you're working with, because you will need help to get there. But again, you cannot ask for help unless you communicate the vision, and for that, you have to imagine it first.